Good morning, Elise.
Good morning.
So nice to see you. Looks like Amber is just popping in, so um, it's so great to have everybody here today. It's uh, it's springtime, and
Oh, it's
that's
beautiful.
it is beautiful. I'm just really appreciating, how nice the weather has gotten, and it's so nasty the winter sometimes. Snow is beautiful and stuff, but um,
Yeah.
springtime weather can be I think can be like invigorating in certain ways. Hey Amber, good morning.
Good morning, Amber. Uh-oh.
Looks like you're live. Yeah, you're
Um,
muted.
I'm muted
There.
as usual. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, so good. Good morning. It's great to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I think it's Monday morning. It's 9 a.m. It's about that time, right?
That it is.
Uh,
Yep.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to Guy Atchison's of Reinventing the Tattoo Community, where tattooers, apprentices, collectors, and the curious are all encouraged to join in these live stream and real world events. Uh, our hope is to inspire and ultimately create better art and tattoos together. We beam out nearly every single day, and with your help, we've become a quality network of on demand and live art and tattoo shows that have all been receiving rave reviews. Um, you can find more at reinventingthetattoo.com. And let me share my screen with you. Cool. Nice. Yeah, so reinventingthetattoo.com, you can always find the latest and greatest right here. You can find the Reinventing the Tattoo app at the App Store, the Google Play Store. We also have a Facebook page and a Roku channel, so be sure to check that out. Um, you can also find various content on all the major podcast directories, such as Apple and Spotify. So we have a number of weekly staple shows as I'm scrolling past them right now. Yeah, you can find them down here at the events schedule. So on Sundays at 1 p.m., we have Skill Building Sundays hosted by Jason Leeser. Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, we have Drawing for Tattooers. That is this show. You've made it. At 11 a.m. on Mondays, we have the Tattoo Weekly. It's followed at 5 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. We have Let's Talk About Feelings with Robbie Ripple. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have this. We have the Monday subscribers exclusive drawing group. So be sure to check all of those out. Monday's busy day, so lots of great stuff on reinventing on Mondays. Um, at 1 p.m. on Wednesdays, we have the Tattoo Now show, and at 6 p.m. on Thursdays, we have the Tattoo Collecting 101 podcast. Um, Excellent. And then, of course, we'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. And I have them showcased here at the bottom of the screen. Tattoo Now. Tattoo Now is technology for tattooers. They have CRM, that's customer relations management software, mailing lists, as well as other upgrades and other professional development products. So be sure to check out Tattoo Now. Ask for Gabe. And then, of course, we would like to thank Guy Atchison for being the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo and Reinventing the Tattoo community. You can learn more about Guy Atchison at guyatchison.com, where you can find original artwork, custom prints, as well as coil machines and other educational content. Um, yeah, And I think with that, we did it. Fantastic.
Yay.
Thanks. Um, Happy Monday, everybody. Good morning and
Happy
welcome
Monday.
to the
Happy
show.
Monday.
Hope everybody's having a great week so far. It's just started. um,
So
I
far,
know,
so
Elise,
good.
You were talking about this is a really big time for you. You're getting ready to do your final presentation and graduate from
Yeah.
college. So that's
Yes.
My presentation's on Tuesday. So I have a practice run today. Hopefully I'm a bit nervous just because I have to do the presentation on a Mac and I've been converted to a Windows person, so there's a lot of technical difficulties that happen when I'm trying to use the Mac because I can't find anything. I think that's what I'm the most worried about is like dead air with me like frantically trying to click and find things. But other than that, yeah, I have one more project to add to my demo reel. But I do have like my preliminary one up on my website um, that I've been working on. So yeah, I've just been prepping for that, and I'm just working towards finishing up.
outstanding. Um, right. Yeah, I think learning how to be okay with dead air is something I've certainly like come to embrace here doing this thing.
Mm.
So yeah, just roll with it. I think it's gonna be all good. And you know, well, we talked about it a little bit earlier, so I think you're super ready, and we're all rooting for you. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, break a leg.
I need the good vibes.
Yeah, good
Absolutely.
vibes.
Sending
Your
you
way.
lots of them.
Mhm. Amber, what's new with you?
Um, Abstract art,
Ooh.
which I've never really done, but I'm getting into it now. I have no idea what this is, but I did it.
Oh, that's glorious.
Yeah, it's very,
Wow.
very beautiful.
And it's all done with pen.
Wow. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
You
Different
know,
colored pens and scribbles.
yeah, that the colors remind me of an oracle deck I have. Have you heard of the Rumi Oracle?
Yes, I have.
It reminds me of that one.
Yeah, I can see that. The colors are very similar.
Yeah. And like the blending too.
Hmm.
But you got that with pen. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the whole thing is that these fine line alcohol pens
Mm.
and scribbles. So I guess technically you would call it a pen and ink drawing,
It would be.
but it's very abstract.
Do you like think of it as was it more of an experiment, or was it more of like you kind of knew what you were gonna go for it when you started, or what do you?
It was more of an experiment. I really didn't know where I was going. It was more like I had to get it out.
It's cool. No,
It,
that's very cool.
I feel a little more like it came through me rather than from me.
Mm. So it was
I always like when
therapeutic.
artwork does that.
No, I agree. I think it's probably probably something that we feel like after the fact, right? Like you're doing it, it
Yeah,
just like it feels like you're directing it, but then when it's finished, there's a afterwards. You're kind of like, where'd that come from? Um, and
yes.
I feel like that's pretty. I would hope that's a universal thing
Yeah,
for creatives. People that like to make stuff. Um, you know, uh, and certainly it's we're we have a lot of influences. A lot of things are composing or making us, what it is that we are and we do. So, no, that's awesome. And so thank you for sharing that. It was a beautiful piece.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're having fun, like, just making artwork, making marks, and
Yeah, it's definitely releasing plenty of dopamine and serotonin.
that's really good. Um, well,
What are you
so
up to?
I I just I was talking with a the coworker recently, and reminded me about this this book,
Hmm.
Dynamic Light and Shade by
Oh, wow.
Baron
I've heard of
Hogarth.
that book.
You seen this book?
I've seen it. Yes, I don't have it, but I've seen it.
It's well, there's this one. I mean, there are others that have similar sort of uh, topic, right? Similar subject, um, and so, but this one particularly. I just remember it's as old as I am. This book,
Hmm.
and so I've remembered it for many years, and and so I think it's something we're gonna talk about it today because I have a little excerpt from it, and I wanted to share that. And so I think again, it will be just very basic, but it's a great book. I would encourage you, check it out. But of course, like having references and having like books around that inspire you, I think uh, it is vital. It was kind of like what we were just talking about with Amber's work. It's like we get these influences and then the work is able to almost you know move through us rather we're like a conduit for the work to become what it is, which is nice.
Exactly.
I think that that maybe takes some of the pressure off of you that you have to be this you know you're so you're the creator, you have to create it or whatever. um, I think there's something nice about um, working through it diligently, and then something like comes of it, something occurs, something develops, and so that's awesome. All right, we've got a new guest with us today, Erica. Welcome.
Hello. Oh, she's so excited. There's two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. Um, so I wanted to show briefly. Hey, Erica. Good morning. Welcome. And was hoping I could show something I was working on. Let's see if I can get it to share. Yeah, cool. Um, right. So
Ooh.
this is my project I'm working on for a Monday night drawing group that I'm part of, and Erica's a part of it too. So anyways, what I thought was nice was I did a video. There's a video of this project. So we're thinking about like composing like a tattoo. We're using these various sort of statue references, and so just coming up with a few thumbnails, thinking like large scale sort of back piece thing. Um, so I'm going with this like I don't know, Zeus or somebody, some bearded statue guy. Um, but I went ahead and like I upped the contrast in it and upped the contrast in my reference. So I was able to sort of see the shadows, see the forms of of this head study. And I think the thing that I really like to sort of point out, and that I want to reference in the next part of the today's talk is about the silhouette. So there's again, there is light and there is shadow and stuff going on um, with this drawing, but there's a clear silhouette, right? The silhouette of the head. Yeah. So just a quick run through of that.
Awesome.
Thank you. Anyways, so
and it only took you a minute 17 to do it?
It only took me a minute. No, it was I don't know. It was like I forget how long. It was like about an hour or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just and the challenge, I think in a big way was ended up being, I want to try to make it a little bit. I want to try to add some more details. I want to try to add some, maybe make things a little bit different, But I had a reference, and I wanted to, sort of draw from the reference. We traced all the time. I trace all the time. I trace everything. So this one, it was fun to practice, drawing from a reference, some observation. But I think what was helpful too was really differentiating the silhouette away, the actual shape of the figure away from the ground. And so again, that's language that we've used here before. So I hope I hope that doesn't sound too strange, but anyway, yeah, no, love to share the Bern Hogarth book. I just want to say, hey again to Erica. If you want to, feel free to turn on your mic if you want to say hey, or if you want to turn on your camera, please feel free as well. But yeah, let me
The more the merrier.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Welcome. Funny. So, anyways, I will. Let's see. Let's see if I can't. See if I can share this with you. There we go. So hopefully you are seeing my screen.
Yep.
Right, and so again, this is an excerpt, a chapter from this dynamic light and shade by Bern Hogarth. Again, it's it's a very cool book, and it goes into so much. Could flip through it a bit, but I wanted to first focus on just the beginning of it, right? It's like I think about this show. Sometimes we cover topics that are fundamental, right? That are maybe rudimentary in a way, I suppose. But I don't feel like we dumb things down. That's not the point, right? It's never the point. It's not. We're not dumbing things down, but we are trying to like wrestle with fundamental topics because we want to try to integrate some of these notions into our work. And I think again, it's sort of like the metaphor, right? Of of using a boat to cross, to cross the river or whatever. It's vital. You have to use it to do it, right? But eventually you leave, you leave the boat behind, right? And you continue on the journey, if you like the metaphor, right? That thing, what I mean is that we will use these things to, to contemplate them. We may do exercises that, are pertinent to it. But the whole idea is that like, it's there for you at a certain point, right? So, all right, so just to get into it, there's we'll talk about the first chapter. So the black and white silhouette, right? And So the just sort of read this first bit. The white picture plane as a field of light. When an artist sits before a sheet of white paper to make a drawing, he sees a picture plane, whether consciously or intuitively, as a field of light. In the same way, he sees any mark, stroke, or scribble within that picture plane as a form, a presence, something inside that field of light. In short, the bounded area of the paper has become a place, and the mark, no matter how crude, has become a thing. Picture plane. This rectangular area, which may be a sheet of drawing paper or a canvas, is a simple picture plane. If you think of this rectangle as a space, the picture plane becomes a void, a ground, a field of light that may contain some kind of mark that represents a form. So I think, we've covered this concept of the picture plane before. And I think, this is a really kind of this is an intuitive way to conceive of it. Sheet of paper. Um, if you're working digitally, right, it's could of course be the screen, that you're on, whether it's, you could be working on a tablet or you could be 3D modeling, whatever the case may be.
Mm.
If you're doing graphic design, there's a ground, right? Again, so in this case, like this sheet of paper, that's being talked about here. And thinking about it in terms of a tattoo, we could think of the body as the ground, right? Even though it's on a figure, it's kind of interesting. It's like the figure becomes ground, right? The body as a void, as a place for marks, for, as a space to create imagery. Anyways, so this idea of the figure and the ground, we've got these few simple things. Scribble talks about it here, right? When this rectangular space is filled with a mark, a number, a triangle, a tree, there is now a presence in the void. We now have what psychologists call figure and ground. The ground is the bare rectangle, while the figure is a mark that interrupts the void. If you can recognize a specific form in the bare rectangle, such as a tree, then you are convinced that a thing can be said to exist within the space. No amount of argument will dissuade you from knowing that you are seeing a figure in its ground, or a field of light where you may be seeing an image inside the picture frame. The idea leaps to your mind that you are looking into a real space, right? So again, it doesn't have to be on white paper, right? It doesn't have to be flat. It can also be, again, the body can be a screen, could be any surface, right? Where we're going to depict, a space where there'll be a mark that looks like something. It becomes a thing. Even if it's abstract, right? It's still this thing uh, that has a presence. There's another presence, so it leads you to think about space and those relations and stuff. And so in this case, we're really just kind of talking about, so white paper and these black marks. It's like the most contrast, the highest degree of contrast that you can think about. Um, but again, there's we could think about the way that Guy Aitchison talks about it: positive, negative, neg. Um, the dark being the positive and the lighter being the negative. That's how he terms it, and so I think it's an interesting way to sort of think about it, right? We have this pos on neg relationships here, all these things. Okay, so we're going to talk about these images here real quick, but just as a way to think about them. We've got these. Author wants us to think about these three squares here first, right? So here they are. You can see these vertical column all the way over on the left-hand side. There are three squares, right? So zoom in here. The silhouette as a form in space. Once we have accepted the white space as a field of light, a background on which things may happen, then any form that interrupts the field of light becomes something real. It becomes a figure on a ground. The simplest example on the figure of the ground is the silhouette on a piece of white paper. A silhouette is a profile view of an object, the simplest essence of a form in space, recognizable as a dimensional object within the field of light. Right, so these geometrical silhouettes, some silhouettes are ambiguous and some are not. In the first column at the left, we see the three squares, right? Three squares. Three squares. The three squares are ambiguous because they do not seem to suggest three-dimensional forms. It's not clear whether they represent cubes, a head-on view of a cylinder, rectangular base of a pyramid. The middle column represents a slight shift in viewpoint with less visual confusion. Right, so we can sort of see these middle silhouettes. They start to represent like forms that have volume, right? See these squares, they are two-dimensional, right? They just have a height and a width. But as we come to the middle column, we see that there's, of course, like because of the way that these forms are represented, right? We can sort of imagine that they have like some sort of volume of a cylinder. The triangle still is, two-dimensional. But as we go here, we can read the rest of this. Less visual confusion, right? The three silhouettes do in fact suggest a cube, a cylinder, and a pyramid. But the three silhouettes on the right-hand column are clearer still, particularly in the case of the pyramid, which now obviously rests on a square base, right? So that's the square of the pyramid, right? Interesting, right? So we get
Yeah.
this notion, or that we get the idea of, three-dimensionality, depth, as well as, a height and a width. So now, again, you don't always have to, use these silhouettes to represent three dimensions. That's a big part of what this, sort of chapter is going to be. It's going to like privilege, three-dimensionality. But there's also some really interesting images in it that, I think that do suggest that like sort of thinking about things in, almost like a two-dimensional way, or taking three-dimensional things and thinking about them in two dimensions is an interesting way, right, to get your point across in a graphic sort of representation. I always like this guy with these like three whatever is going on. It's like I've heard people call Bern Hogarth, his author of this book, as an acquired taste. And so if you're familiar with any of his other work, you may love it, you may not.
Seems like a fun guy.
Yeah, fun guy, indeed.
Suddenly quirky.
But yeah, there's definitely some interesting sort of principles that I think that not only he's not only talking about, there are other artists that talk about it, and of course we can always relate it, like we think about how people see, how we see, how the audience might see. Again, this might have a lot to do with you know cultural values, right? We're talking about tonal values, but the way that you know people of a given culture will see things is gonna be in part, if not in large part, dictated by the way that a culture teaches you how to see things. So as we see these representations, it's kind of they I may assume like, oh, these are clear. They may be clear to you. They may not be as clear to others. But we're talking about these ideas, and I think it's this is a start, and that's why I think this is I think it's a very interesting book, and this is a very this is a great introductory chapter to think about this sort of this very basic relationship between the figure and the ground, the positive on the negative. These are the, sort of the where seeing can begin, right? You would have to have this at least. You'd have to have some sort of ground and some sort of figure on it for anybody to make anything out, at the very least, right? So that might be sort of the baseline of universal, of image has to be this sort of this first relationship, right? So the silhouette in the third dimension, if we understand the silhouette as a real presence in the world, we must see some suggestion of the third dimension, as seen in the foregoing examples. A clear, unambiguous silhouette depends on finding the right viewpoint, a view of the object that gives a sense of perspective, a grasp of the whole form. To achieve this sense of perspective, the drawing must communicate a presence of a ground plane which the form rests. Something else we talked about, we covered this, we covered these ideas about perspective, about linear perspective before. Picture plane, a ground plane, but I think that this is even, this almost gets at these concepts even in a more basic way, right? So balancing figures, right? We see these two dudes like holding each other up, so the balancing figures. This action silhouette is believable because the feet of the lower figure seem to rest on a baseline. All right, the athlete's legs communicate a firm sense of the ground through the two figures. There is also a clear sense of the vertical line of gravity. Something else I think I feel like we've talked about it, but certainly if you're gonna draw the figure, right, gesture sketch, right, or design your own characters, or even these figures of the bottle, right, the bottle and these glasses and stuff, like the way that you choose to depict gravity, it's going to be, like it's going to give the image its sense of, well, let's say logic, if you will, right? So it feels like these characters are holding each other up, and then there's a gravity that, there's weight on the upper one and the lower one is supporting it. This is, through balance and through the position of the body. Um, this bottle feels like it's standing upright. If it were like, slightly tipped to one way or the other, it would feel like it's going to fall over, right? Tip it all the way over, it'll look like it's turned. These sorts of ideas. It communicates something to the audience. I feel like there's, and there's an intuition that we would have when we see these things depicted in a certain way. Again, this is why like tattooing can be challenging, because like finding the right balance of how to depict, sort of an object on a person's body. It's always in motion. Even when you're standing still, your body is moving, you know.
Plus,
Can
it's
be
not a flat surface.
Yeah, it's curved.
It's like muscles are always, sort of flowing and stuff, it's you're breathing, it just isn't, it's never going to be static, so it really can be a challenge and an opportunity, right? There can be all these sorts of new things that can happen.
Yeah, you can use it in your favor.
I believe that's true. And it's one of those things. It's almost like, like you were saying earlier with your work, Amber, that like it's just sort of, sort of moving through you, like the work is moving through you in some sort of way. You have to be there in the right place, the right time. You have to, do the hard work, and it
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like it,
Scribbling on this
inspiration will
piece of
strike.
paper with all these little pens has definitely been hard work. And
Yeah.
now I'm adding the dark areas and the edges and the shadows.
Again, that's where my mind is at today, is on this idea of silhouettes and stuff. I heard Russ Abbott, tattooer, he's a tattooer from
I love
Georgia.
Russ Abbott.
Love Russ Abbott. Love Russ Abbott. We featured the Russ Abbott color wheel
Mm-hmm.
a few weeks ago. it's a very it's an amazing tool.
It
Anyway,
is.
yeah, it's very cool. Uh, anyway, so he was talking recently about, I heard him talking about like this idea of silhouettes in a tattoo, right? That the design that that we're going to do, it has this silhouette, even if even if there's again further details that are in it, right? The figure, whatever the figure might be, has a certain silhouette, and how it's recognized on a body is, you know, uh, it's so instantaneous. Like when we spot this figure on the ground, we're gonna like first sort of look for this whole sort of shape, right, before we get into the details. I think as an artist, I know as the tendency is to noodle around on the details.
Uh-huh.
To get in there, all I want to do is the eyelashes and stuff. I want to draw the toenail for some reason. I don't know. You know, you want to do that. It's like there's some element that captures your attention and your imagination, fascinates you, and you want to do that. But um, uh, there's a oneness to things, right? There's a wholeness to a thing, and so you sort of find that silhouette first, right? You work from the larger to the smaller, and then everything can work together in a more effective way. They can reinforce each other. All these many one things, right? Like an eyelash is one thing, and you know, fingernail is a one thing, but it's a part of another one, right? So there's one whole thing, and then there's all these many other ones within it. Somehow they stay together, and this is the task. It's what's so challenging, right? And maybe even someone's tattoo collection could be thought of this way, right? It's many individual pieces that are gonna at some point come together and form a
As
whole,
one.
yeah, a whole one thing. It's somebody's one thing. So, um, but uh, but anyways, ah, fun, right? So again, we're looking at these illustrations here. I want to get the bottom of that cup for you so you can see it, right? House. Seen in perspective above, this silhouetted house shows us a large house with wings attached to the main structure. Look at um, the topmost line of the roof. Does the rooftop recede from the left to the right or from the right to the left? It's one of those optical illusions, right? Like
Oh.
depending on where you're looking at it from. Um, Looking at the total silhouette, studying the visual logic of the other structures, the form of the roof recedes from the left to the right. To the back of the house is at your right. So,
Yes.
um, right. Um,
Mm.
Objects on the drawing board, right? The pen, brush, ink, paint bottles, eyeglasses, eraser, leads, and coffee cup are not parallel to one another, but are at odd angles, yet they seem right. They seem to be correct. Because each silhouette makes us feel without question the presence of a firm, flat surface of the drawing table on which these objects rest. For each object, the best viewpoint, the best angle has been chosen to suggest that this white paper is not just a field of light, but a dimensional space. Um, Note that the left lens of the eyeglasses, uh, right, it has like refraction, right?
Yeah.
See this refraction? It's a nice detail. You know what I mean? It's even if it's exaggerated a bit, uh, kind of gives us um, just even I don't know more character.
Yeah.
These
My brain
silhouettes,
automatically turns them into blocks and cylinders and then plots the vanishing point to make sure they're all on the same plane.
Mm.
right? Exactly. Um, yeah. visual signals, right? That's how the author talks about it, right? These visual signals that are all sort of helping to reinforce the scene, right? This scene is one, it becomes one, and I mean, even if we're going to group all these objects together, even though they're not all touching. We could go in and again, it's like we could think about like are the glasses? They have all these components, right? There's all these parts to its whole thing. It has lenses. It has the arms or whatever you call those part, and then of course like the frame, right? Anyways, it has all these pieces that that form a wholeness, right? And together, it's more than just it's different, right? It does a function, right? But it's different than just the single part of it. As a scene, right? Put all this together, it's an artist's sort of table, or somebody that likes to draw things, figures on grounds, like, ink bottles and pens and stuff, and then of course like your coffee cup.
Definitely looks lived in.
Yes, I wish my work table was that tidy.
Oh
Right.
God, yeah.
It's a representation though. It's like you make you make your space, you depict your space as you wish. I think
Yeah.
you have that power of representation. But the notion is that like just one of them by themselves, even though forms a wholeness, put it together, it starts to tell us something different, or becomes other. Each one in its separateness is other to the other ones, and thus like this whole scene becomes other to all of the pieces of it, right? So but again, it's like the figure is other to the ground, or the ground, whatever the ground may be. This white paper could be flesh, could be anything, could be the screen. Covered all that. The figure on top of it uh, is other to it. There's a difference. There's all these differences, and so that's, I think, it's the is what we're a part of what we're going for. Back it up a little bit so you can get all these guys in the book. It's kind of cool. It's like it's all this tangle of bodies, and then it's stretched across. I didn't put it together, but it's like stretched across, and there's 2 pages, so it's really quite dramatic. But again, I think it's like we see all of these, all of this, so individual figures in space on a ground, but put together. Right? We can't help but to sort of group them because of their proximity. They're all so close. But what becomes clear, right, is all of the pause on neg relationship, all of the strong graphic, dark against light, that helps us discern this figure from the space, right, or even one from another, even though they're overlapping. There can be almost this sort of strange. Here's another like 3-armed person. 3 arms.
3-armed at the bottom too.
Yeah.
And there's 3 legs over here.
3-leg guy too.
I wonder what's the meaning of that.
Also art.
Well, I don't. I'm not gonna say that I know for sure. I mean, there may be somewhere in his writings where he talks about like why that would be, but I could only imagine it's like it takes us time for our eye to move from one point to another, right? And so in this way, like having these multiple limbs all together, it's like the movement of
Yeah,
a body.
I felt like it was depicting movement.
Yeah, I think that's intuitive that it would be. I mean, it's like clearly this person is is very skilled at drafting and at drawing the figure. So, he knows there's only, well, like generally that there's two legs.
I don't know, maybe
There
he's
might,
got a secret.
everybody is different, right? We're just talking about different, right? So to say that there's never a three-legged person ever would not be correct. It's just generally, generally we only see.
Hey, if there's two-headed people, it's more likely there's a three-legged person.
You've got it. That's exactly right. But I think in this instance was probably that's we all seem to be in agreement. It seems to represent like movement. So even though it's a bit it's stylized, there's an abstraction there. Um, and
I'm not upset with it.
yeah, it's fun. I think
No,
there's
yeah.
something fun about it. It's not misspelled, if you like. It's
Yeah,
not,
it's kind of whimsical, but it gets the point across.
it's not a misspelling. Well, in the past, in art, artists would use this strategy for sure. They'd put like they put like a saint that's being like that's being eaten by a dragon has also vanquished the dragon by emerging out of it, right? So like
Mm.
as your eye moves across the picture, you're sort of seeing this.
Poor
this
dragon.
right, exactly. I'm sure there's other examples of it, but this idea, right, that's an event has occurred, and then it has this progression of a narrative has happened, and then you're seeing it depicted. But before like everything's an invention, right? Even comic books, like sequential frames, it's an
Yeah,
invention. It's a technology that happened at a certain point.
I
Before
love
then,
comic
people were
book
coming up
art.
with these solutions, right?
Mm.
Before moving pictures, before comic strips, right? There was this, and so this is it's interesting. It's like we're seeing it here, but it's also um, uh, it's a strategy, right? That that sort of gives us action and something, especially could be considered so static, right? Just silhouettes. Um, but yeah, so many figures, and we can see like all of this detail and all of this motion again, even though it's just a silhouette. I guess I'm thinking back to those three squares that were on the depicted on the page earlier. They're very
Mm.
static, and they just really seem to didn't seem like they had much going on. But from that, we've sort of moved through, and here we have like this very dynamic sort of scene. Um, Again, all these figures in action. There's a rotational symmetry here. We can sort of see like all of these bodies are almost sort of like orbiting in a certain
I
respect.
can kind of see a Fibonacci spiral in the negative space.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're probably right. Yeah, I could
It's got
certainly
that
see.
constant swirl of negative space getting larger and larger.
Hmm. Um, whether whether the artist plans that or not, I think sometimes it shows
It
up.
just happens because
Sometimes it
that's the way
does.
your eye automatically moves across paper.
Hmm. Fascinating. Um, so anyway, this is
That dude on the bottom is not having a good time.
this guy here,
No.
right?
Yeah. Jesus.
You can see like there's a lot of torment in this hand here, and then
Yeah.
some of these feet going on.
Yeah, that angle is not good.
Looks like he got
Yeah,
stomped in an unsavory place
yeah,
recently.
for sure. There's all sorts of what's about to happen. Look at this foot, though.
Yeah, those toes.
Quite a
Yeah.
toe, right?
Those are called
Shows
yoga
a lot of
toes.
pressure being put on that.
um, yeah. So
It definitely shows the plane though.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's true. In a bit of exaggeration, I think when used like effectively, can be very like um, be very like sort of important to the composition.
We
You
need
know,
to
it's like this,
exaggerate things a lot of times in tattoos,
right?
Mm.
Exactly. You
even
know,
if we're just exaggerating the contrast.
exactly. It's important to take the license, right? To have the license, artist's license, if you like. But leaving this negative space, here's foot with the negative space, leaving it larger, than it probably would be likely. Um, it helps. It helps to depict this in a more uh, a graphic way. Helps make it much more clear. So, all right, let's we'll go down and we'll check. We're just about done. I just wanted to, sort of. I thought this one. I think this one is so
I
beautiful.
was about to say, I really like this one.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the Jungle Book.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure.
Where's Mobley?
Yeah.
And so again, I'll read a little bit of it, the language here. Silhouettes can convey degrees of light. Although we have only the white paper to communicate the brightness of the light, the silhouette can actually suggest differences in the amount or degree of light, greater or lesser intensity of light. Um, and so, yeah, it's a little, from the scan, you can see it's a little bit fuzzy over here on the right-hand side, but again, I think um, what we're sort of supposed to contemplate here is like the denseness, the thickness of all of these overlapping silhouettes versus this more stark. Obviously, we can see this snake. And what's sort of nice is there's almost almost a repetition, here in these vines.
It conveys depth well.
What's
Hmm.
that?
It conveys the depth of the picture really well.
I think so too. Um, right. So jungle scene. Right. A large tree boa emerges from a jungle setting. The network of leaves, vines, fronds, and tropical bird
Verdure.
verdure. Thanks. Along the edges seem darker than the central open area. Central space appears bright. Indeed, else why would the serpent appear so sharp and clear in contrast with the murky, indistinct shapes of the surrounding jungle? Let your eye move back and forth from the center to the edges to confirm this impression. Along the edges, this dense concentration of dark silhouettes somehow makes the black ink look blacker. Spatial question, look around the boundary and ask yourself whether the boa is moving away from you into the picture or outward towards you. Um, yeah, no, I think that's a really, sort of beautiful way to put it. Like it just, these areas, because of their concentration, does look, this dark area does look darker.
Mm.
There is a lot of motion, I feel like, in this silhouette of this snake. Um,
Yeah. I think also the dark edges are kind of like a vignette, uh, also because it gets darker, and then as it gets smaller and more delicate, it lightens it up the center.
Yes.
so you're yeah, so like it frames it, right? I think
Hmm.
that's I think that's really well seen. Sort of um, a very nice observation. And thinking about, I always like that's the theme of this show is like tattoos and stuff. So it's kind of like if we were to, um, if we were gonna tattoo this, what would you do? Perhaps there could be another layer of, you know, of this. What was that word again? Verdure. What was that?
Verdure.
Verdure. Thank you. I've never pronounced that word out loud. Anyway, verdure. Like yet another one of some of these sort of negative shapes. Could sort of inframe the frame, if you like. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways that you could go about it, but that's one of the differences, right? If we have a frame, something talk about artwork and stuff. A lot of times there's this sort of sharp edge that sort of contains, right? There's exclusionary, right? There's what's inside of it, and then there's what's outside of it. Um,
Mm,
with the
Hmm.
body, it can be more challenging sometimes to put those edges on, especially if they're, you're trying to do something very squared up. Um, Sometimes there's natural boundaries, right? You kind of there's an end to it. There's only so far you can go. So there again, there's things you can use to your advantage, uh, but I guess I just I do like this idea of um, again, it's sort of there's a balance that happens in terms of how dark for the vignette versus like scene. There's this sort of central sort of focal point where you know where the dark becomes it's the star of the show, if you like. Um,
Mm.
Again, it's very cool illustration. It spans across. It just there's a little bit of it over here on on the other page. Very cool. Um,
there's Mobley.
right, exactly. These are so the author did you know is, did a some very well known illustrations like for comic books of Tarzan and stuff. Um,
Mm.
it was very popular, during that era. Um, the era that this was made, right? So the 70s and the 80s and stuff. So, anyways, but again, I think what we're, like if we take a moment to sort of appreciate this, this leopard illustration, we can clearly see this figure of the leopard, right? And there's all these other details. We can make it out, right? We make this the shape of its form. We discern it from all this background. Um, Even though, again, I think, there's a lot of repetition of shapes and forms. How is it that we're able to sort of pick this? I hope so. I hope, I'm not alone here, but like that we can, you know, pick out this leopard shape, right, from the rest of the background. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's a really interesting feature of our, you know, conscious perception that we can sort of discern these different things.
So they
Everything
say
is.
that
Go ahead.
I think they say that it's like a survival. It's like a derivative of like a survival tactic of the brain of being able to recognize silhouettes of creatures very quickly, especially like if you show people different silhouettes, like we'll immediately know what they are, even if they're kind of ambiguous.
Yes,
That's interesting.
yeah, I've definitely, I definitely have heard that. I think it must be true, you know, and I feel like, we're kind of seeing that in action right here, like you
Yeah.
said, there's a survival. Um, I mean, and this guy looks pretty aggressive. I wouldn't want to, like,
Run up on a naked man with a knife.
right? Like,
Yeah, really.
yeah, if you're in that jungle terrain and this dude shows up, you know,
It's time to go.
yeah, you might be
Party's
better off with
over.
the leopard guy. I don't know, but I
Well,
don't know.
thank
But there's like so there's like a little lion down here. That's going to get into the next sort of idea that the book kind of gets into, but sense of perspective, a sense of depth. Even though it's just on this basic level, there isn't a lot of shading and stuff. It's just Paz on egg. Um, See this figure, right? We can make it out. That's sort of human form in the jungle. You know, Looks like all these are branches. One of them could be a snake. That would be easy to sort of hide in there. But then
mm,
also this lion, down here at the bottom. Yeah, again, it's kind of we recognize these forms. Um, but yeah, so all right, yeah, just about there. So here's this other depiction of depth, right? So different scales, right? And we can start to get this illusion of three dimensions. Again, these are all very two-dimensional, but they're depicted in a way to sort of give us a sense that they have some volume, and then they are also sort of uh, 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 positioned so that way they give us this greater sense of depth. Um, and again, I think once you start really talking about like once you get this concept down, and then you start thinking about like tonal value and giving things like various degrees of rendering, like lightness and darkness. Um, and then things can become very convincing. It gets much more complicated, to be sure, but uh, but yeah, no, it's not sure what's going on here. It's very thin, very narrow rope for sure. Whatever string it looks like. And so
It's
yeah,
wrangling.
this is
Yeah,
this is not condoning or condemning cowboy like stuff, but just more we're talking about the artistic principles that are being used here to depict a particular scene, right? So, um, anyways, there are again we got this sort of interesting. We're talking about earlier, like how could we sort of, if we're gonna do a tattoo, like how could we depict that scene of dense black jungle
I
vignette.
like how they use the negative space in front of the steer to make the grass
Yeah.
and stuff.
Right?
That would
Yeah.
be very dynamic in a tattoo.
Exactly. This is you're reading my what I'm putting down for sure. There's another little, there it is over there and back there again. So it's a strategy, right? Sort of like this layering, this positive on negative and negative on positive, and so on and so forth. And it gives us these different, degrees of perspective, closeness, farness,
Depth.
closer, further away. Um, so there's a ground back in the sky, right? There's a space, a void. This, you know, this wrangler shows up, right? Wrangles this steer. It's a little closer to wherever on the picture plane, it's closer to us as a viewer. But then closer still, again, is these little weeds, is the grassy areas, right? It's obvious, but we're just pointing it out and sort of like getting these layers, that sort of depict space. It can be done so simply, just in light and light and dark, if you like, in a graphic way. Um, and so this is the beginning, right? You can start here, and then you can make it more complicated. And I think, but right when it's dark on dark, right, it all kind of becomes, you can't discern as easily one thing from the next, right? And so, you know, it can, there can be like you can lose the clarity, right, that you would want if this, you know, if these two figures were right on top of each other, like, perfectly aligned in some way. I mean, it was, I think it could be easy to lose the, you know,
The
these
plot.
forms, right? See, you wouldn't be able to see their contours, that sort of an idea. Um, right. Again, it's so simple, but at the same time, So, what you were saying, the reverse silhouettes. There's like, well, again, we see that down here as a
Uh-huh.
strategy that's used,
Mm.
for this grass in front of this horse and stuff. Um, and these like
Ooh,
Yeah.
sweet leopards, like,
that's pretty.
yeah, beautiful, right? Yeah, sort of using it, some negative leopard, and then of course, like there's these positive ones against a negative
That would make a good
background,
forearm band.
I was
right?
just thinking that. Yeah.
It's you know, I think there's all sorts of ways that you can, that you can apply some of this to, you know, graphic arts, whether it's like you're painting, you're drawing, tattoos and stuff. But again, I think this is a good place to kind of start. If you're composing something, you may want to start thinking about it in terms of just this is dark, it gets light. Then if you want to render it more, you can go through and start to say like, all right, there's going to be subtle variations in tones here and there.
Mm.
But just getting this basic relationship down can be so powerful, right? And then maintaining it, like, all right, the background in this case is going to be lighter, right? So figure is positive on a negative background, right? Oh, okay. Well, now, and in this up here, this negative silhouette, it's the figure is lighter than the background, right? So we have a negative on positive, and so on and so forth. You develop this rhythm, and I think I know that like old school tattooers, they talk about it a lot. Like there's just you don't want to have dark on dark, light on light, so they do their whip shading and they'll shade like an eagle or something like that, right? It's like it's the same principle, right? It's a very solid sort of graphic principle, and then we can use it in our we can sort of see it in our work, and I think it extends to color. We're talking about we just see black and white right here, but it extends to color. How dark is that color? Um, so on and so forth. Yeah, so here's the frieze of leopards, very cool, beautiful
Yeah.
image. Like we can again, it's talks about background, foreground, middle ground, how all these things are sort of working together to give us a cohesive sort of story. And it's dynamic, right, and dramatic and stylized. So, and then there's let me back up a little bit. You can
Oh,
see it.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
cool swamp scene. There's all kinds of like little creatures and stuff that are hidden in the silhouettes. And, um, so yeah, and then leaves and all sorts of other again, just like it's it's a whole scene, right? It's a whole one, right? And it depicts something. Um, each individual by themselves would have a story, right? Um, but of course, we sort of put it together. We can't help but to group these because of how close they are, and the reason that we can see them is because there's a positive to negative relationship. There's a ground, right? There's a space where there seems to be a presence of things that are depicted, and so uh, we end up we end up making representation in our imagination based on these simple marks. So I like this little
the
like
little frog.
frog guy.
Yeah.
Frog and a rabbit and there's a turtle.
Like a snapping turtle or something over there. Um, yeah, it's again just thinking about these very basic graphic silhouettes. I think it's a great place to start. It's important, and everything is going to have it whether you like it or not. And
Mm.
so when we get involved in the details first, you can really lose the elegance of the silhouette. So so yeah, that was that.
That was
That was what I wanted
beautiful.
to talk about today. Um, and so I know that's stuff that you've sure you talked about, sure you've covered in the past. Um, but maybe you've never seen that book. Um, maybe maybe you're already thinking about a piece that you're working on, and how can you like sort of integrate some of these ideas into it. I think that's again, that's hopefully something that ends up coming through for you. Um,
I think I've been kind of thinking about that lately because I'm working on a set of tapestries. I actually finished the other one. I didn't tell you. I finished
let's
the
see
one
it.
that I've been working on. Oh God, I don't know if I have enough room.
Mm.
Let's see. Okay, we got it.
I saw that. It
Beautiful.
came out
Yeah.
really
Here,
nice.
let me
Yeah.
spotlight. Beautiful.
Woo. There we go. Yeah, but it's a big abstract piece. Abstract must be really in right now, Amber.
Yeah,
But I had to think about how to like pare down my colors just because I've never done so many color changes before. And I wanted to like limit my palette. So I had to limit it down to 3 and trying to get all the shapes. I also did like a mini one because I had, and it says love you because I'm cheesy.
aw,
I'm really cheesy, but trying to figure out how I'm going to like layer things on top of each other so that it's like readable uh to someone who's far away um has been like a new challenge since I typically work with like a lot of colors because I'm typically building models that are very color color specific. So I'm trying to get the most amount of detail. So like paring it down to like 3 colors, that's my challenge is keeping it to like 3 colors max has been a challenge in uh, my composition.
That's exactly what we're talking about today. So I really love that. And like you said, readable, like from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I found that with I had used so many colors in this that it didn't have any dimension, and that's when
Mm.
I'm like, all right, it's time to push some black into this to give it some dimension, and so it looks more 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm adding edges and shadows now to show where the light's coming through because I want it all to have that glow that the middle has,
Mm.
and that takes a lot of scribbling, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's so many like so many little sort of gestures that come together and make this whole thing. Um, whether it's whether it's each sort of knot of the yarn, or whether it's each scribble with the pen, um, or each like mark with the tattoo machine. Uh,
Yep.
Again, it's just so many, like it's all that stuff. It comes together. It doesn't just sort of magically appear. It is work. It's hard work. Um, but that's like that's where the joy comes from. It's like is in pursuing that. It's like you're
Yeah. Is
making.
it really work if it's, making you happy?
Well, I think that has to be a perspective. You know what I mean? That you're enjoying like this process. You
Mm.
can enjoy it. Because it's probably like it's like I enjoy making the tattoo, even though it's like or the painting or whatever, because it's like it doesn't exist yet. You lack it. It doesn't. It's not there
Mhm.
yet. And so you enjoy this making of it, like you enjoy not having it, and then taking the picture is the happy part. It's like, and
Yeah.
then that's over, and then it's time for the next thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right
So
now at the shop, I'm just working on fake skins, and it's producing the happy chemical. So
yes,
I'm good with it.
and enjoy that. I think that's a good thing to enjoy.
Yeah. I don't even mind being the shop monkey. It, I'm paying my dues. I'm supposed to. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'll take out the trash. I'm good.
No, again, I think that's an enjoyment that you can have, right? Like you want to be somewhere in your life. You want to like
I've been trying to get into a shop for 25 years. I'm good with
Whoa.
where I'm at now.
yeah, yeah. And then so once you're you know uh you're getting your commission, you're full artist and stuff like that, then you'll have to start thinking about the next thing, right? You
Yeah.
graduate from one thing, it's the next thing is it's uh that's what becomes I don't know, it's a space to dream a new dream.
Yeah. The next thing I have to prove I can do is lettering.
Ooh.
which I'm
Also,
pretty good at.
I have to
So
hop off. Have a good week, guys.
Thanks,
you
Elise.
too.
Um, yes, lettering is something I think that we're actually going to start. We're going to cover, um, and so I'm excited to talk about that as well.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's this is a great place to sort of wrap it up for today, and
I agree.
love to get some. If you're going to give us a sign off, Amber, we'll wrap it up.
All right. I am Amber Morgaine. You can find me on all social media at Amber Morgaine and at Luxury Tattoos in Egg Harbor City, New Jersey.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming. And thanks for
Thank you for
sharing
hosting.
your newest work. I thought it was it's like super cool and um,
Thank you.
yeah, just keep it up. I mean, that's the like you said, it's like you enjoy it. It's it's important, and so I can't wait to see more. Want to thank Elise for joining us. It was great to catch up with
Yeah.
her. Um, yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Erica, it was great to see you as well. Uh, I'm James Wisdom. You can find me on the internet at Tattooing Wisdom, tattooingwisdom.com, Instagram, Tattooing Wisdom. Um, Thanks to Reinventing for making this space possible. This has been Drawing for Tattooers. Be sure to join us next week, where we're going to talk about more interesting and exciting topics that have to do with drawing and tattoos and stuff. So, of course, if you're here still, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe. We'd love to have